Thank you, Eva. Hello, everyone. My name is Thanassis, and I'm going to talk to you about something completely different. A few words about me. So I'm afraid I can say I have over 20 years of experience in data, digital marketing, digital advertising. What's I think a bit more interesting than that is that I've been on the technical side, I've been on the user side, and I've done this in very different companies across different countries as well. So I've worked at L'Oréal in France in more BI and setting up data warehouses, etc. I then spent probably 10 years approximately at Neopost, a very large but very B2B company, which is not very well known. More on the marketing, being a marketing director, etc. Then some time at Google as well, working on data strategy. And then I joined eBay in the eBay Classifieds Group entity, which is now merged with Adevinta. So I've been doing this for the last 3 years, where I lead global analytics teams, especially in marketing and advertising. A little bit about Adevinta. So Adevinta is a global online classified specialist, which means that, as Eva said, we are not very well known as Adevinta yet, as an umbrella brand, but our brands are very strong in the different markets. So here in Germany, you might be more familiar with eBay Kleinanzeigen, which will soon be Kleinanzeigen, mobile.de, and if you come from other markets, you probably know Marktplaats in the Netherlands, Tweedehands in Belgium, etc. We're a pretty large company. We're one of the, I think it's fair to say, we're one of the biggest customers for Google Analytics in EMEA. We have 2.5 billion visits monthly, and we provide 25 products. What we call products is about like domains, websites, you could say, and apps. And we are approximately 8,000 people. Of the 8,000 people, more than 3,000 are tech people, data engineers, data analysts, etc. And it's quite a large chunk of people. And what's interesting to see is also that Adevinta, which is not very old as a company, has been built through acquisitions, mergers with eBay Classifieds Group, etc. So as a result, we have Adevinta, which is a constellation of not only websites, but also teams, also technologies, etc., which poses an issue in terms of, let's say, challenge in terms of data. Another quick word about our tech hub. So we have 4 tech hubs in Barcelona, Amsterdam, Paris, and Berlin, which is an additional challenge because those teams that are already like a patchwork, they're also distributed geographically. And even the people who work in my teams are either in Germany, in Spain, in the Netherlands. We collaborate with some teams that are also in Shanghai, and basically all over Europe and North America as well. So the question is, how do you provide analytics, let's say, excellence with such patchwork and of companies and of teams and of technologies and data? So it's more going to be sharing our journey around how do you treat data as a product and how do you try and bring maximum value thanks to this. I would offer you to dive directly into the topic with this analytics cheat sheet that I have there. And I think the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is what are analytics? We're here in an analytics summit. I'm pretty sure everybody has different definitions, and I'm sure all are valid. But for me, analytics is really the science, but also the art of contributing to data-driven decisions, right? So to adding value to business decisions thanks to data. And in that sense, it's slightly different than pure data teams because you are really close to the business. You have one purpose, which is to bring additional value. So if we split a little bit, if we try to have 3 tiers, because we all love 3 tiers, you have the business intelligence, which would be the easier level of maturity, the data analysis, and the intelligent products, which would be the most advanced ones. To share a few examples, everything around reporting, dashboarding, BI, etc., is supposed to be the simple part. And when I say supposed to be, it's because having worked with many different companies in my previous roles, the reality, just to set expectations, is that many companies stay at this level and are already struggling to tackle this level in a way that we all read HBR, etc., and we all think that all of this is easy. The reality is that it's difficult. It's difficult because this is real life, data is incomplete, data is not consistent, etc., etc. People don't behave the way we expect them to behave. And let's say the ultimate level of this is KPI value steering, meaning that we are often asked to provide scorecards, dashboards, management cockpits, etc., for our leaders to be able to follow KPIs, right? And seeing this, as always, when you just look at things, they sort of magically improve themselves. If you don't look at them, they don't. So if we provide a consistent way to see this, then it activates all sort of data-driven decisions so that we zoom into things and we can actually solve problems. What we do, and fortunately we do this without completely solving the first part, is data analysis in a slightly more advanced way, what I usually call a more statistical way, right? So it's more about experimentation, about predictive analysis, about forecasting, about segmentation, clustering, these kind of things, right? Where you start to leverage mathematical concepts with the power of data to be able to classify things, do 3 tiers like we do on this slide, etc. And forecasting, which is interesting. And intelligent products, which is the third one, is more about how do you usually, very often, it goes through using machine learning algorithms. And it is about, let's say, guessing things that are probable, such as fraud prevention, propensity to buy, propensity to cross-purchase, and things like that. And if you look a little bit, like the bottom line is what I call brilliant basics at the beginning, because some sort of basics we all do. But to do this very well in a consistent way is really not easy. The second one, which is a bit more advanced, is invaluable insights. Why do we say invaluable? Because it's, for me, the limit is that if you don't have a bunch of skilled analysts, they can be statisticians, they can be mathematicians, then you don't see the same trends, right? You don't do, like, for the most, let's say, savvy of you, you don't do regressions, you don't things like that. You just look at charts. If you're not skilled, you can't see this insight, so it's invaluable insight for that. And the last one, which is advanced analytics and AI and machine learning, as we said, which are, by the way, being more and more commoditized. So a few months back, a few years back, and in this, like following this slide, you will have a 2x2 matrix with effort and impact and maturity. Now it's less and less the case, because you see that AI and machine learning is commoditized, and we can actually use this without having to reinvent everything ourselves. So how do you achieve this? How do you achieve tens of billions of data points every month, and thousands of people working on that, and dozens or hundreds of decision-making people? This might sound a bit simple, but it's really, I think, going back to the core values of how do you do this. The first one is really focusing on people and business impact. It sounds a bit corny, but in my experience, the temptation to do tech for tech, or to do like advanced stuff to do advanced stuff, and having no impact, this is something that's real, right? So we are people who are skilled, savvy, and we like to do things that we are skilled for. We really need to make sure that there is an impact, and that what we do is what we call actionable, but it also provides value to the business. The second is synergies. For us, it's very important, because we have, again, like those 25 products, and of course, everybody wants to achieve sort of the same challenges. So when you have fraud everywhere. When you have recommendations, you have recommendations everywhere. When you have image detection, when you have things like that, everybody tries to solve the same issues. So you need to sort of have a good view of the landscape of the use cases and try and bring together the teams to work once on the same topics and not a million times. The other is only consider excellence. Why do I write this? Because we all have lots of pressure to deliver, etc., on deadlines. And in excellence, I mean especially on people in recruiting. Are those the right talents? Are those like the right attitude, the right DNA to go work with existing teams, etc.? Something that's very important that in this world of very competitive markets, etc., is for me is invaluable in terms of putting energy in there. And promote DNA literacy across the whole company. And when I say across the whole company, it means like understanding what is a data-driven decision for people who are not at all on the data-driven side. And also maintaining the skills, because all of this, as you know, changes very rapidly. It used to be quarterly, now it's monthly, maybe weekly. So you need to make sure that the people who work are up to date, not only for the company, but also for the people themselves, right? So you want to have a team of data and analysts who feel like they are up to date and they are in an environment that fosters that. So I'll just bring you a little bit through the journey in the past 3 to 4 years that Adevinta went through in how we try to tackle that. So initially we had like all these lists of websites that were sort of next to each other, right? They were purchased, they were brought together. And at some point, of course, there was the need to try and put this together, consolidate this together. And so, by the way, why? Well, the main reason is, of course, KPI steering, etc., but also benchmarking. Also looking at what sites do what better than the other one, so we can share and we can create those synergies. So you had the different markets, and you had some beginning of central teams, right, that were actually interacting with the market. So if you take simple examples, you would have marketing teams who want to see what the traffic is, what basic KPIs such as CTRs, return on investment, things like that, like operate across the different markets. But the sales teams would ask also things that are a bit similar, and the product teams would ask something that are a bit similar, with quite a lot of overlap. So the initiative was good, right, because we started to try and compare different things, and vertically and horizontally. The problem is that, of course, like it was messy, it was very much like no automation, it was error-prone because people were asked to repeat this many times. So quite naturally, sorry, it's something that you would do as a first reaction is to try and have add some more resources in the middle to try and coordinate that. And it was positive. Why? Because you had a consolidated data analytics team that would indeed collect, be responsible for collecting all the data from the different markets, collect all the needs from the central teams, and try and mix that. So it worked pretty well. But very quickly, you see that this creates a bottleneck. Why? Because you have a team of a few people, a few dozens of people, who actually have to manage all this with hundreds of people on one side and thousands of people on the other side. And what you also see is that all the overlap that we were talking about before was not really addressed. Because data, as you know, is a sort of a mysterious thing, but the understanding of the business is actually where the value is. And this is where I consider analytics to go more towards, which is delivering additional value to the business instead of really being on the data side. So what we did, and those of you who are a bit familiar with concepts around data mesh and domain, concepts of domain ownership, etc., we created domains within the consolidated data and analytics team, which means that in these teams, we have people who are more and more closer, right? So sparring partners with the business teams, the central business teams, to understand what the problem is in terms of business, what the reporting needs are, what data products, you could say, we'll come back to it, are, etc. And this worked pretty well as well. But of course, the more you slice and dice, the smaller your teams are. So this is a bit the level of maturity that we still are, that we were a few months ago. And then you're okay, so what's next steps? Because this is also difficult to sustain in an environment that's very rapidly changing. The answer is a bit twofold. So the first one is about what are the skills, what are the roles, how do you actually organize those teams in an optimal way. And there is, again, in my let's say, idea of being close to the business or being more closer to the data, there's this data and analytics teams versus platform team. So platform team is really, for me, something that takes care of the data in terms of architects, architecture, infrastructure, data governance, etc. And the other ones are more with data engineers, with analysts, with domain owners, so people who are really understand very well the business, and data product managers. We had those for quite some time already, that were not called this way, but we renamed them because we decided as a company, so as like a few thousand people, to go towards this concept of data mesh and especially of data as a product. So what is data as a product? So what is a product? Why do we say data should be treated as a product? A product, first of all, is something that only exists if there is a market for it. Right? So if you take any physical product, in this case, I took a car. Sorry, it's an English car, but it's German engine now, so it's fine. You only market a product if there's a market for it, right? So when you're a normal product manager, you do some user study, research, etc. You see there's a market for that, and then you start marketing your product. So this is something that will be essential for data as a product. And why did I take this picture? Not only because there's a car, but this is the configurator of Aston Martin, which means that you can start choosing engines, you can choose colors, options, things like that. And this will be something that we'll go through as well with products. There's a feature roadmap, right? Because delivering something takes time. Context changes. Prioritization happens all the time. I'm sure nobody here says that I don't prioritize. I always have bandwidth to do everything. You need to design things again to be serving the market at a certain moment and being able to change it when the market changes. And the market we are in, which is analytics, data capabilities, etc., it changes more often than ever. And much more often than physical products, by the way. And also sell, right? So it is much better in the real world to have an average product and to sell it well than to have a perfect product that you can't sell well. If you look at, you have many examples around you. It's like a product that's well sold, that's well marketed, that people dream of. It sells much better than a great product that's just an engineered product that's not sold well. It's the same with data as a product. If you create something that is just perfect and that's available, but that does not correspond to an urgency, that does not correspond to a need that's defined for this quarter, for this year, that's not being pushed because there is competition, like in the real world of physical products. You have competition of data products, of data solutions, of reporting tools, of priorities in terms of business, of what you're going to tackle with all the data, with all the overwhelming information you have. So selling this, and that is the job of a data product manager. So another thing that's important about data as a product is the consumption of the data. Right? So who is going to use that product? And that can be people. Take a dashboard, so people will look at the dashboard. But also, if you look at the concept of data as a product, it can be other data products. Right? So you have the things that are closer to the source, what we call the golden source, so the data products that are directly linked to the operational data. And then you build onto that. So the same way that a car uses, a steering wheel, and the steering wheel uses an airbag and uses leather, and the airbag uses some gas, etc. So it's sort of a recursive topic. It's the same with data. So if you have some very granular operational raw data that's being used by a data product, this one can also be used further. So if you take an example like this that's quite easy to understand, so sales, pricing, invoicing, competition, etc., one very basic product is reporting. Right? And use cases is BI, which is people who look at it. But actually, what you need to make sure when you have data as a product. And what we are really organizing is the fact that the same data products can be used by multiple use cases. So in this sense, you see that you have the reporting, but you also have advanced analytics, for instance, which would be other data products that will rely on that. And the idea is exactly not to replicate your data products, right? So with different schemas, you could say, with different specifications, with different data contracts and things like that. But it is to be able to have this decentralized ownership of the data and to provide data as a product to be used consistently, either by other data products, internally or externally, by the way, or by people. And those use cases, so again, can be simple as a human looking at something, but it can also be predictive modeling, churn modeling, for instance, can be data exploration, meaning just drilling down and trying to find root causes for things. But it can be also very complex things such as marketing automation, which means that the frequency at which you provide your data product, the sort of SLA you have, the way you market your product will be different if you use it to streamline data for a real-time application, or if it's a weekly, a monthly reporting, etc. So this is a journey, which means that we have not completely nailed it, right? But what we think is that we have a good idea towards what we should be doing next. Meaning that the products that we use today, the data products that we use today, we should standardize, we actually organize around this so that it is available to the whole 8,000 people, 3,500 product and tech people in the company to be used in all those use cases and in a consistent way from all the markets, all our websites, etc. So instead of a monolithic approach of saying, okay, we are going to give a huge framework of how we're going to build a huge data lake or a huge data warehouse with the same structure, with same rules, etc., we actually decentralize the ownership of data with clear contracts, clear specifications, so that the data products can be used and centrally and by other markets. And how do you do this? Because this is like a 5-year project, right? So if you said, okay, today I know very well what I want this to be, by the way it's done, of course it's too late, things have changed, etc. So it's not rocket science, but it is about iterating an iterative process of development, right? So it is discovery of use cases, and this is, I'm sure you all have this because you have business owners that knock at your door with use cases every day. You start by unlocking, and unlocking means setting things in motion, right? So it means having a smaller version of products, having an MVP, having a... So an example I take often is a SpaceX versus NASA, right? So the NASA, they work on a rocket for 10 years and down the line it works, hopefully. And SpaceX, they just blow up 15 rockets and at the end it works. So I don't encourage you to blow up anything, but it's just doing this in an iterative way that we see at the end accelerates faster. It's embedding it, right? So it's not only showing it, it's actually using it. Using it because it will create traction around the users, it will create urgency, it will help prioritize. There's this phenomenon of, I don't know if you read the same things as me, called dashboard decay, right? So this is the idea of providing something once that was a very specific need and an urgent one and a very valid one, but then you provide it and you leave, and that thing is being used, and then slowly it's being used less and less and less, and disappears. So in order to avoid this, you actually iterate this by providing a smaller version, but having it used, having it followed, and then iterating it with the business users. So this is the last slide I have, where I hope you follow the journey, which is far from being over for us, but how we at Adevinta try to organize this immense and very diverse source of data that we have as a product. So the first thing that we do is not tech. The first thing, I'm really convinced about this, is that tech comes last. The one thing that comes first is people, so the users, but also how you organize as a company, as a data and analytics teams to actually serve those business needs. So identifying the strategy of the business needs and having, like replicating this, mirroring this in the data and analytics needs to be able to really partner closely with the business team. Treat the data as a product, as we said, so to ensure usefulness, profitability, but just to keep things in motion, right? And to prove the value continuously. Nobody wants, and less now than 10 years ago, nobody wants like a kickoff and then a product that comes out 1 year later. Nobody wants that. And focus on people. And when I say people, it's at the same time, again, the users, but also the analytics team, the analytics teams, by making sure people are continuously trained, people are continuously engaged in understanding why they're building different stuff, and understanding, seeing like the value, if possible, measuring the value of what you're building, measuring the usability and the usage of the data products you do. Why? Because a bandwidth is also something that not only builds up, but also needs to build down sometimes. So being able to stop things that are not being used and focusing on things that are being used. And with this, I have absolutely no clue of how much time I spent here, but I'm completely available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Perfect. There's a clock, so we have 2:20 left. So I think we have time for one question, if there is one. We got one in the back. So thanks to you for your talk, Thanassis. Very interesting.
Hello. Thank you for presentation slides. I have one question. How big should be customer audience for such approach? And when it makes sense to treat data as a product, on your opinion?
So I think that's a very good question. When does it make sense? To be honest, I think it depends on your organization in terms of a few things. In terms of probably maturity, diversity of data, if you've just started. So because very often, what you see is that companies, when they start small and they start like good enough, right? And then they grow and then they never go back, etc. Or the other case is a bit like our case, right? So when you are already very big and you are becoming a constellation of very diverse data sources. I think this is when you have lots of data, lots of appetite to actually use that data. When you have sort of a data-driven culture and an innovation culture in the company, because those are not neutral things, right? So when you do this, there are many things you don't do. Right? I would say that the right moment is when you have this sort of crossroads of those things, right? You have enough data, skills, appetite, readiness for failure a little bit sometimes. And when you're closely engaged with your business user, right? So where data and analytics are seen as business partners, and what you could say is schematically when the business users are chasing you and are not like escaping when they see you in a corridor, this is a good moment to partner and to build those things.